Something that's super funny that people don't think about when I do the podcast is the fact that I can't talk to them really before.
Right.
So I had to make you stop talking to me.
You're like,
where are you from? And I'm like, I want to ask you where you're from, but we have to wait until the podcast starts.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start now.
Okay.
What's your name? Where you're from, and what do you do for a living?
Okay, my name is Brooke Cagle. I am from here originally, grew up, born and raised here, and I do graphic design and photography full time. I also work at Vinnie's Pies, and I lead worship for my church.
Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, so you do a handful of things.
A little bit.
And you said you're from here, right?
I'm from here.
Where did you graduate?
I graduated high school in 2008, and then I went to UFAS, and I graduated with my associate's degree first, and then I worked as a designer for a couple of years and then came back and got my bachelor's and then left town.
And you say you left town?
I went to Fayetteville for a couple of years and worked at Black Box Labs. It was a startup creative agency. And then I worked there for 3 years, and then I moved to Iowa, Kansas, and then I just came back to Fort Smith at the beginning of 2020 officially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what came first, photography or graphic design?
So that one's hard because I got like a point and shoot camera when I was like very young for Christmas one year. And so I feel like I was always fascinated with photography from a young age. My mom always had a video camera in front of our faces, videotaping literally everything. So we call them baby tapes and we like watch them back all the time. But graphic design is what I went to school for at college.
Okay, so if you had the background with photography, why did you choose graphic design when you went to school? Because it seemed like you would have just went immediately photography.
That would have made sense, yeah.
Okay.
I actually thought I was going to be a vocal major, to be honest, at the beginning. So 2008, it was the summer of 08. I had just graduated and I wanted to be on Broadway. I thought I was going to be a dancer and a singer and wanted to be in New York, even though I had never been. And so I think it was called Fundamentals of Music for a summer course, and I hated it. Mm-hmm. Like I couldn't get out fast enough, basically. And so it was coming up where we had to enroll for like actual, fall enrollment, you know, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And UFAS didn't really have any photography specific degrees. And I honestly don't even think at 18 that I was thinking about photography. I saw graphic design in the course catalog and it said something about color and layout. And I was like, oh, that's probably what I need to do. And there was one seat left in every class that I needed to take for my freshman year. So it was totally fate. And so I just started in graphic design and I can't see myself doing anything else. So photography ended up being like a secondary thing when I got in graphic design, and I started wanting to take pictures for my projects. And then friends started asking me to take pictures, and families, you know, would be like, hey, can you take pictures of my kids? And it just kind of went from there and kind of blew up. So.
Okay. So photography, graphic design, and it started at a young age. What about music? Where did that kind of trickle in?
Yeah.
I mean, I will say it does make sense. Like, with all the different types of creative arts, that music, photography, graphic design. But how did it start for you?
Yeah. My parents were DJs growing up. Oh. So mobile disc jockeys. My dad had the Great American Road Show. And he had karaoke outlet down on Towson Avenue. And so, I mean, literally from the time I was 4, I was like dancing on speakers at proms and, you know, wedding receptions. And so I've been to more weddings and proms than any one person could ever want to go to in a lifetime. But yeah, music just from a very young age has just like run through my veins because of the way that I grew up. My childhood was based around music. My parents were doing shows every weekend, and I was the youngest little roadie, you know, that they ever had. So
So you say you're a worship leader now?
I am a worship leader now. Yeah. That was another big part of my life. I have been going to church my whole life, and I think the first time I ever sang on stage was when I was 4. And I sang an old hymn called Worthy of Worship. And so it just kind of every church that I would go to, I ended up being on the worship team and helped start a church in Kansas, came back, and the pastor at the church that I became a Christian at needed a worship leader. And I said no at the beginning. And then the Lord had other plans.
Yeah.
So now I'm a worship leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do a lot. You're talented, but what are you passionate about? And it could be out of these things we've talked about.
Yeah.
Or it could be set aside from those.
Yeah.
And what have you been most passionate about your entire life, I would say?
I was just having this conversation the other day because there are so many things I'm passionate about, but a thread, like a common thread that I have found as I look back through my, the trajectory of my life, I just love gathering people. And that has been something that I've tried to do at every stage of my life, is just get people together and connect people, because I have a deep love for people and a deep love for God. And so, connecting people would probably be one of my biggest passions, and gathering them together.
And how have you been able to do that so far?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of ways I've been given the opportunity to do that. But when I moved to Iowa in 2017, I had a dream, and it was so random, but also not random at the same time, because when I woke up, I was like, whoa, I don't know what that was, but it totally makes sense. And I saw the logo of what is now called Segue. I saw this logo in my head, and I, as a designer, I got up and got on my computer and started fleshing it out. And it kind of started as just this dream, right, of gathering people together, giving people a space to belong. And I ended up launching it for the first time in Kansas. So
Can you, just want to pause you, can you describe the logo?
Yeah.
As best
it's
as you
super
can?
simple.
Okay.
Because that's kind of my vibe anyways, is very minimalistic when it comes to design. And the logo was just the word Segue, which it's funny because a lot of people don't know how to say it, but it's like an English word in the dictionary. It's Segue. It's not the things that you ride on a Segway, but the U has a line over it. And when I got up and had remembered this dream, I immediately thought of a magnet. So for me, at least, it's kind of a conversation starter with the logo. If anyone's like, what is that? And how do you say it? And so Segue, the logo, kind of symbolizes this need to magnetize people together, And so I loved that. I loved how simple it was, and how it just, to me at least, it made sense of what I was trying to do, even though at the time I had no idea what I was trying to do.
Okay. So you started in another city first, is what you were saying.
Yeah.
And,
yep.
You can continue along there, I guess.
Yeah. So I was in Iowa when I got the vision for it. We moved to Kansas, and that's where, so I had moved to Iowa to help start a church in Kansas.
Okay.
So there was a bigger church in Iowa that we were learning from and gathering resources from. And then a group of us moved to Kansas, helped start this church. And so I was in Lawrence, Kansas, and that is when I first launched Segue. And I was making connections with local business owners in the town, and just organically created these relationships with people who caught on to the vision of Segue, as I even tried to figure out what it was and what it was for and who it was for. And as I would talk about it with certain people, it's like, oh my gosh, well, we want to help you. How can we help you? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe we can meet here, because in my head, and it's a once a month gathering. It's just a social gathering, right? To meet new people. So we met at a coffee shop first, and then we met at a plant store and different places in Lawrence. And so when I ended up leaving at the end of 2019, I always thought when I came back here, it was going to be temporary. I didn't really want to come back to Fort Smith. I couldn't wait to get out of town when I was here. But now, when I came back, I have 7 nieces and nephews and a family here that I love dearly. And
why did you feel that way?
Why did I feel like I wanted to leave?
Yeah. Why did you feel like I don't want to go back home?
Yeah. I think that there were a lot of layers to that, but probably the biggest one being that when I grew up here. And so it was, coming home, there was a part of me that almost felt like a failure if I was going to have to come back to Fort Smith. Like that was like my immature mindset, right? And just the thought of there's nothing to do in Fort Smith. And that was my childlike mind when I was 18, before I left. And so coming back though, it was like everything changed because one, even going to Iowa and Kansas and Fayetteville, like I'm like the people that you meet make it or break it, and you can make a town like what it is.
Yeah.
And I learned that Fort Smith is amazing, and there are so many cool things happening here, and it was a place where I felt like I could pour back into from what I've like learned when I left.
Yeah. I think people have a negative context a lot of times when they think about moving home, right? And it's like the perception of what are people going to think about me? People are going to see me as a failure. People are going to see this as a setback. But in all reality, like it's not that, right? These people who are in your hometown are the people who helped you to get to where you are today most of the time.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, I understand sometimes that isn't the case. But even if it's not that, you're from there, so I feel like having a negative context is common for everybody.
Yeah.
Like it's definitely common for me. I would never move back to my hometown. I'm sorry, people watching this from Brinkley, Arkansas, but I will never move back to Brinkley. Actually, if I got really, really rich, I would move back home. Yeah. So
what would you do if you moved back home?
Change the whole town. That's pretty much
that's
it.
the same kind of mindset though of being a young creative who wants to create change. I mean, I think that that's like the millennial mindset too, is we want to make a difference somehow. And so I was like, how cool would it be for me to move back home, to come home there? And there's been so many different layers of that kind of coming home mindset of me being back in Fort Smith with my family at the church that I became a Christian at, doing Segue here and like feeling like, I'm trying at least to make a difference in a place that meant a lot to me. And there have been so many people here who have been such pillars in my story and continue to be. And then you move back and you meet new people, and those people who helped you get to where you were will not challenge you, but propel you forward.
No, for sure. And I think one of the things too that I think about in my own self when I did have that mindset of, because there was a season where I did have to go back home, did have to stay with my parents.
Yeah.
And I did have those thoughts of, oh man, people are going to see me as a failure. Oh man, I am a failure. Look where I'm having to take these backward steps. And I just want to say the pride associated with that, to think that someone else is watching you enough to care about the fact that you moved back home, to point their finger and look at you as a failure. Like, how important do you think you are that people are looking at you that much, Yeah. And I think that's one element of it too. And two, even if people are looking at you, why do they care?
And that says more about them than it says about you. And so, but I was saying that earlier, is it's like an immature and definitely prideful mindset of not wanting to come back and take a hold of what you can do in that town and not see it as just like a negative. Yeah.
And I think it's also like for me, and I think for a lot of other people too, it's also like the thrill of something new. Yeah. I think that's like when we were in high school, we've been in this town forever. Yeah. We know every street. We know every store. We know all the hangout spots. Yeah. We know that friend who we don't want to be around lives here and probably still will stay here after school. So we want something new, but I think, our minds develop and we begin to notice different things. And sometimes I definitely recommend that you do get outside of the bubble of your hometown at some point. 100%. I'm not saying long term, but go travel. If you can't afford it, go overseas. Yeah. That's the number one thing I recommend. Go overseas and see what life is like in a different place. But then come back home and you're going to be more grateful, especially here in America. You're definitely going to be more grateful for the opportunities that you have in your hometown. I mean, I say that, but now I'm thinking about some of these places that like the city limit or like the amount of people, the population is like 10 people. Yeah. I'm like, maybe you should move out of there if you want to actually do anything where your life
on the place.
Yeah, other than be a farmer. Yeah. But
it changes your perspective when you get to travel and meet new people that don't look like you, They don't speak like you. They don't eat the same foods. They're not around the same circles, especially growing up in the South.
Yes.
In the,
Bible Belt.
Yeah. We're in it. We're in the middle of it. So I mean, when I moved to Fayetteville, that started the change for me, change of perspective. And then Iowa and Kansas, radically changed that, So I agree.
Okay. So you started Segue, and I will say this too. So when we were looking to move back, we were looking on Instagram and we started looking for churches. That's what we started looking for. We're like, okay, what church do we want to be a part of? And then the next thing that we looked for was like, what can we do?
Yeah.
And we literally saw the Instagram account.
For Segue?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
And so we were like, oh, this is cool.
Oh, cool.
Okay. And then we were trying to figure it out. We couldn't figure out okay, what's going on though? Is this attached to a church?
Yeah.
Is this a church itself?
Yeah.
What's going on? Because it's really not common nowadays for young adults just to come together for for not sports and for not church. It's just not very common.
It's unheard of.
Unless you're going to go partying, or you're going to go to some event or a concert or something. But just to come together to get to meet each other, that's super uncommon. So we were like, what's going on?
Yeah, interesting.
So can you describe kind of what you've talked about, where your goals are, to bring people together. But if you're sitting at one of these events and you're looking out and you're by yourself and the event's going, people have come in the door, what is successful to you when you look out?
Yeah. You just said a lot that I'm there's so many things I want to say, because I think it's interesting that you coming back here and coming across the Instagram, you're like, oh, is this associated with a church? Is it associated with another group? And the answer is no. It is not a church. It's not affiliated with any other, not just religious organization, but it's not affiliated with any other organization or genre, right, of group or activity, which is, I feel what makes it unique, because it is unheard of to just have a group get together to meet new people, to sit in that uncomfortability of just coming with that sole purpose. There's no other motive. And literally that's the biggest, maybe question that people have is what's really going on? What do you want? Or what's the motive here?
Yeah.
And I'm when you ask the question of when I'm looking out and I'm sitting there and watching the event happen, I am watching people show up to an event. They have no idea what it is, right? Because it is kind of you look at the Instagram and you still don't know exactly what it is. And I think that's fine. It's going to attract a certain type of person, right? This kind of young professional. But you don't have to be anybody to come. That's why the slogan that I recently came up with, even as it evolves, is show up, be you, meet someone new. I'm trying to eliminate any obstacles in the middle that would keep someone from coming and making a new connection, whether that's a friend or a potential spouse or business partner. I mean, there's endless opportunities, right, of what connections can bring. And so you show up to this event and you're mingling for a couple of hours with people you wouldn't have otherwise met. Mm-hmm. And there have been what you asked about a success, what would I consider it to be a success of it, is people are actually making lasting connections. And that is the point. So,
yeah. Okay. And so when was the first one here in Fort Smith?
January of this year. Well, actually, I tried to start it a couple of years ago in 2022, and we were meeting at the Baker District, and something just didn't feel right about it. I just don't think it was the right time. I also was in an interesting place. But so the official time when we launched, because it was only a couple of months that we did that, but we launched in January of 2024 this year officially.
Okay.
So
Okay. I'm about to put you on the hot seat.
That's fine.
You got your red shirt on, so that means you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. What is some negative feedback that you've gotten about it? And it could be from here.
Yep.
It could be when you were in a different city. Mm-hmm. What's some negative feedback that you've gotten about Segue?
Yep. So when we were in Lawrence, and it's a mixed bag, right? Because I'm never going to make every single person happy with a group like this. Or in any aspect of life, you can't make every single person happy. But some of the things I heard, because in Lawrence, we were meeting at a different location every month. And some people loved that and some people despised it. And so when I launched it here officially, I thought, especially after COVID, I think our generation needs some consistency and just something that's constant. And so I wanted them to know like where they're going, what time it is, and to be able to like show up and, not have any questions. So that was one part of the like negative feedback that I tried to change whenever we came to Arkansas. Another thing is especially because a large part of the group that comes to Segue are introverted, which I love. And I am not that way, but I attract introverts and I love trying to help them I like to help make everyone feel comfortable. But I have a heart for introverts because I'm like, I want them to be able to find genuine connection as well. Yes. And I know that with that personality type, it's just a little bit harder, right? There's more obstacles that they have to jump through. And so I think some of that personality type feels uncomfortable with there being no agenda.
Yes.
At Segue.
Oh, my wife would not come. Yeah. She would not come if she didn't know what was going to happen. Yep. She's that type of person.
And I think a lot of people aren't coming because of that.
Okay.
And part of me is like, that's okay. And then part of me is like trying to evolve it constantly, right? So I am always looking for critique.
Yeah.
I want to figure out a way to eliminate that part of the uncomfortable feeling of like stepping into the door and not knowing what to do with your hands.
Yeah.
So we brought games, we have free coffee. Sometimes we have a free meal for people that come. And just recently, actually, there was a group from the Arkansas Manufacturing Professionals group that is a little bit smaller, and they joined with us last month. And were giving me some great feedback of bringing, even if it's the first 10 to 15 minutes of Segue each month, bringing someone to come and speak about a certain topic or, something like that, so that there's a point of coming aside from meeting new people, which is kind of opposite of what I want it to be. So I'm still trying to figure that out, but I'm all up for critique. So those are a couple of negative-ish.
Do you have like a team at all?
So I didn't have anybody that I was like starting this with. It was really just me. But since January, basically, there have been a few girls who have shown interest in just like helping me, which has been amazing. And so they're like my team now. So there's just 4 of us. And they help set up, they help brainstorm with me. And I am, looking to kind of have more people to do that.
The reason why I ask is because like kind of thinking about it from like an ambassador standpoint, right?
Right.
If you have, you're way more likely to go to some place, even if you don't know the agenda, if you have a friend who's vouching for it, right? So if like you have like little ambassadors amongst the Fort Smith community, and like they're talking to a friend at a coffee shop, oh yeah, I just went to that event last month, it was a lot of fun. They're like, oh yeah, I saw that, but I didn't really know what it was, so I didn't go. And they're like, oh, it's fun. We literally do this. We did this. It was cool. Then that person is more likely to come. Some
100%.
type of system like that. And I think like you have girls now, but getting guys in there as well.
Well, so Carlos Sanabria, you probably know him. He's a local artist and so talented. He works with Plus Grand Media. And I feel like people like him and another guy, Ian Claiborne, who come are very much like proponents of Segue. Like Carlos is always hyping me up and Ian's always saying like when he comes to the events, like that they wish, they look forward to coming. And so it's word of mouth, right? When someone comes to Segue or I'm having conversations with people just in my daily life and I can share with someone, then it's going to be word of mouth, like spreading. And so I'm getting people that are doing that. I just haven't formed like an official like team, right? Of like ambassador, like we don't call them ambassadors, but I would consider them to be that.
And maybe ambassador is the wrong word.
I like that word though.
But something similar to that.
People who are like spurring you on and talking about it, because I can't be the only one doing that. Like that's unrealistic and we're not going to grow, if that's how it's going to be. I definitely want more people to, help spread the word and really take hold of the vision that I have for it and spread that. And so,
So it's been
little by little.
So you started in January, so that means it's been quite a bit. We're in month 9.
We're in 9, September.
Okay, so you've had 9 events so far?
Next week will be September's Segue. So we've had 8.
Okay, so
next week we'll have 9.
So in your 8 months of Segue, have you seen any couples get together at the events?
So in Lawrence, I will say the very first Segue that we ever did was at Cause Coffee, and 2 people showed up who did not know each other, and they're married now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So here, I know that there was one, like, this happened 2 years ago when I tried to start it. 2 people that had come ended up dating. I don't think they're together anymore, but I'm not sure of anybody in this group this year that have started dating, but my neighbor makes a joke about Segue, like in a loving way, but he calls it date club, which I kind of love because I think that's such a positive outcome of Segue. If someone's, I'm single and 34, you know, so I'm looking for a husband too. And if it can be,
hey, y'all hear that?
Yeah. But I'm like, if it can
tell me your ID.
Right.
Yeah.
So if it can bring people together, like I was saying, like as a friend, a potential partner, or, you know, networking situation for business, like there's so many great potential outcomes of a group like this. So
yeah, and honestly, like it's really cool for even professionals, right? Too, because if you're coming to this event, you're like you're working somewhere you don't want to work, and you're able to hear about just someone else's job, and you're like, oh yeah, they're hiring a position.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, yeah,
exactly.
Can I apply?
Yeah,
You're like, yeah,
exactly.
I'm sure that happens like a lot. So 2 questions I had. One, have you reached the med students here yet? And I guess I'll do the next question after you answer that. Yeah.
So I just got done creating our new website. So as I was creating content for the website, I really had to think through all of our pillars, all of our, all of the things. Part of the website was how people can partner with us. And in my head, at the beginning when I was creating it, I'll have to look for that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I was trying to navigate how to get more people involved, right? Mm-hmm. How to get the word out, whether it's to get anything from them or not. Because that, I have a rub there. Like there's tension of me wanting to totally have it just this way forever and not ask for any sponsors, not ask for any kind of partnerships. But without me even doing that, people have offered that from the very beginning. So like the Bakery District hosts us for free. For Katie at Fort Smith Coffee has graciously offered to donate coffee every single month. And then I work at Vinny's Pies, and like Ursula and Vinny love the idea of Segue. So they've donated pizza and different things along the way that I wouldn't have necessarily asked for because I don't like asking of things from people like that. I have tension there, but I had to work through that as I'm like thinking about Segue as a whole and how I would want it to grow, and not just with the idea of like a financial backer or anything, but more donations in terms of food, or really just like I need business cards, or whatever. And like the website domain, I'm paying for that on my own. And so I was listing out different ways of like how people can sponsor us and partner. And UFIS alumni, the group at UFIS that is basically in charge of reaching the alumni, they found out about us in February and wanted to partner with us. And so it's been so cool to watch people in the community like take a hold of the idea and want to like help me. And you asked about Ache, and that's kind of like one of the groups that I was like, this is the perfect group to kind of partner with. And my friend Susan there is putting she's in the marketing department. And so she's putting some of our marketing in their publication and things like that. And so I'm just starting to like try to reach those people like the med students and the alumni, because I feel like those 2 specific groups are like perfect places to start in Fort Smith, since UFIS is such a huge, part of our community, and Ache within the last, almost decade now is the same. And so we're beginning to do that. To answer your question, I know that was a long answer, but.
Yeah. Okay. And then the next thing is, okay, You get married within the next year. And then you start having kids. What then? What happens? What happens to
with
Segue?
Yeah. So we have had married couples come.
Okay.
We've also had at least 2 married couples with children come. They just don't bring their children. So they use it as like a date night if they can plan ahead and find a babysitter, which I love. I think naturally, like organically, couples without children are seemingly more inclined to come to Segue than couples with children. Did I say that backwards? Couples without children are more inclined to come than couples with children. But we are open to
everybody.
Both.
Yeah.
So you can be single, widow, divorced, like married with kids, whatever it looks like for you, like every stage of life, like you are welcome. That's kind of like the point that I'm trying to convey, at least, is that you don't have to be any certain type of person. There shouldn't be a barrier there unless they feel it just by looking at our like social media, which I feel like could be something that someone takes on, if they're gonna think that the group is not for them, like that would be false for them to think. So let's say no to that. Like, you can come.
Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to ask you also was, what are some of the things that you actually do or have done in the past? And is it seasonal based? Like, for instance, like, are you transitioning now to fall things? Were you doing summer things at the events? Were there like spring things? Like what are some of the things that you actually do try to plan for people to have the opportunity to meet each other?
Yeah, that question also has a lot of layers to it because I'm a dreamer. So I have lots of dreams for Segue. And so far, what we've done, to answer your first question, is we've had local musicians come and play at Segue. So I love doing that. Even if it's background music, people can sit and listen to an artist that they, have never seen live before. And I just love supporting local in general. So I feel like that's been really cool. We actually have Scott Bartholomew playing in September next week for our September Segue. So I'm excited about that. And aside from that, aside from having local musicians, we haven't done anything necessarily like big events outside of that, or like at Segue. We haven't done anything else in terms of like activities other than like karaoke at the Maddox, But we have like, so as a Segue, there's like this idea of having interest groups outside of our monthly gathering.
Okay.
So the idea would be, which right now I feel like I'm trying to be diligent with like the small of like once a month. It's hard enough to get people to like commit to a once a month gathering. Like, and so I'm really trying to like get that steady first and get a good handle on marketing for that. And then like see if there's any, see how much interest there would be for other smaller groups outside of that. Right. So like book club, karaoke specific, or bowling. I mean, whatever the activity would be, there could be potential smaller groups of activities that people can do throughout the month. So you asked about seasonal events, and for October, we're having Segue on Halloween.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet.
Okay.
I'm trying to brainstorm right now of if we do some sort of like Halloween specific or like candy, I don't know.
How many people do you typically have?
We have had anywhere from like 15 to 55 people. So each month is different. There's new faces each time. But for November, we are absolutely trying to do a Friendsgiving themed dinner party type vibe. So I think it's going to be like a potluck. But that's all kind of in the works right now. So it hasn't been seasonal specific events yet, but in the summer, people have gotten together outside of our, monthly events and done certain things. But it's kind of left up to them, right? It's like, I can't do everything for everybody. So like once you meet somebody, like get their number, and hang out outside of the group. That's kind of the intention, is like create like meaningful connections with people that will last. So just the other day I was working out and a girl came into the gym and I was like, I know you were at Segue. And she was like, oh my gosh, yeah. And she was like, hey, I should let you know, like it's working. And I'm like, okay, cool. What do you mean by that? And she was like, me and this other girl that like met at Segue, like we hung out last night and had a great time. And so people are making genuine connections and friends. And so that's, a huge success to me.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. What do you hope for in the future for Segue?
I think there needs to be a Segue in every city.
Okay.
I have said that to my family so many times. That's obviously me dreaming really big. Yeah. But I think, especially just in the few cities that I've lived in, I'm like, if I knew about a group like this, like I would go. I'm an extrovert, right? But like I would go. I go to places by myself all the time to try to meet new people. And it's hard to find if you're not going to a coffee shop with the motive of meeting somebody new, or a concert. You know, if your mind's not there and that's not the motive, like it's really hard to meet new people.
Yeah. Well, when you said that, one of the things that I thought of is because I'm techie. Yeah. I thought, this could be an app, right? So like, what if this was an app where you downloaded it, and like it's not like Tinder, or it's not like Bumble, right? Bumble? It's not like that where it'll like voting on people, whatever, but it is a place where you can meet up with people, and there's like scheduled events by the community, right? So it's like you have one big event every month, but there's a small group that's going to go and play pickleball every single week. Exactly. And there's like a separate group for that within the app, but anyone can look into the group and see what that is. Or there's a separate group that's going to go play volleyball, or there's a separate group of guys who's just going to go get beer at a local pub and watch the game on Sunday or Saturday afternoon. And that would be super cool. I mean, I think that would be, because I think apps, the way they've been built so far, like the connection apps, they don't really end up with people actually connecting. Right. They actually end up with people like digitally connecting. Right. Which isn't really the point. Yeah. I mean, like, I've never been on these apps, but I can only imagine how many people you're actually meeting that you swipe left or swipe right on. You know, you're probably not meeting majority of those people.
The statistic is low.
Yeah. And even like the people. Yeah. So I just think like connecting in person. Yeah. Which has obviously gotten lost due to a bunch of different reasons, but also COVID, social media. Yeah. So having an app that focuses on connection in real life would be like a huge win.
It would be so great. I've said all of those things. So that has been something that I like have in my, I have like a note, I have multiple notes on my phone, but like one of the notes on my phone is like Segue brainstorming for like the future. And that just makes sense because we're already kind of doing that with like the group me and a Facebook group, right? Of trying to create these groups of other things happening. And in Lawrence, we had like an intramural group where we would do volleyball. And so there was like 15 of us, you know, outside of the Segue monthly events that would go and do the intramural sports. And so naturally, I think that's already happening. It's just not like an official app. Yes. And so I think those things will come in time if it continues to grow and evolve. But yeah, those are just a couple of things, you know, for the future that I hope for Segue.
Yeah. So what do you personally hope for yourself in the future within 3 years?
I mean, I would love to be married. That's probably like one of the biggest things. I feel like my career as a designer and photographer is going really well, and I am confident in who I am and in my relationship with the Lord and the way I'm serving at my church. And I'm just ready to like bring somebody into that, you know, to my life and share that with someone. And so that's one big thing that I hope for. But Segue is a huge part of my personal journey as well, right? And so like I hope big things for that. I hope that my Tributary Studio is my graphic design and photography business. And so I hope that grows and keeps evolving with new big clients. And I'm working a lot with Unsplash. And so I want that to grow. And yeah, just I think like all of the things I have my hand in right now, I would just want to continue to see the Lord bless.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Can you let people know as we're closing out what your socials are? Yours, and then obviously the groups and how they can connect with you online.
Yeah.
Or how they can connect with other people offline.
Yeah. Yeah. So Segue, we have a website. It's www.seguefortsmith.com. And all of our socials are listed on that, but it's at Segue Fort Smith on Instagram and Facebook. My personal is Brooke Cagle on Instagram. I don't know what my Facebook at is, to be honest.
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, and then Tributary, if anybody wanted to look at my graphic design and photography, it's at tributarystudio.co.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you.